Hi,
Okay.
this is Jacqueline Loring, and I am pleased to introduce our speaker today. Cheryl Brown is a screenwriter, a producer, a director, and president of Reel to Reel Productions. She has produced several short dramatic films, served as a line producer for a Swiss TV travel series, and co-produced a documentary feature film. Cheryl's understanding of New Mexico film incentives through the New Mexico Film Office, as well as her MBA and CPA credentials, help her to produce products that tend to be well run, ahead of schedule, and under budget. From personal experience, I would add that she is generous with sharing her filmmaking knowledge, and her cast and her crews love working with her. Cheryl has a passion for comedy, and she has produced several comedic spec commercials and TV trailers, a web series, which I hope she talks a little bit about, called Where's Norma Now, which is just so much fun, and several short comedies and a comedic feature film. One short film she produced won 3 of the 9 awards at one film festival. So my pleasure to introduce Albuquerque resident Cheryl Brown.
Well, thank you so much, Jacqueline. And just to introduce, as she said, I am the president of Reel to Reel Productions out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. I am a CPA, so I understand the various incentives with regards to filmmaking. So if you have a project that you're thinking this would be great to make into a short film or feature film, New Mexico is the place to do it. Because if you do it right, you get 25% of your out-of-pocket expenses given back to you in cash. So that is the biggest reason we are like one of the top players in all the United States with regards to filmmaking. And don't think filmmaking has to be the big studios. There are a lot of independent filmmakers here. And you'd be surprised at the number of independent films that have come out of New Mexico that you are aware of. So just a real, very quick list. Being John Malkovich, independent film. Little Miss Sunshine, that one was in New Mexico. Black Swan, Juno. So basically, independent films can make it to the big time. If you wanted to see a little bit of what I have done, this is my website, and it's Reel, the number 2, not TWI, but the number 2, Reel Productions. And with these links, you can see the various projects that we have. And specifically, Jacqueline had mentioned the Where's Norma Now. That was a web series we did for 3 years. That's comedic. Also has the short, 12-minute short that we won 3 awards for in one film festival, and samples of our other work. So just if you're curious, that's where to go. Now, talking about screenplays, the most important thing to remember is it really starts with a good story. If you don't have a compelling story, it doesn't matter how beautiful you write, it's not going to catch anyone's attention. So of course it has to have an interesting plot, fascinating characters, realistic, snappy dialogue, and it has to capture the reader's imagination. Basically too, with regards to screenplays, every scene needs to advance the plot and also stand alone on its own merit. If it doesn't advance the plot, that scene should be edited out. It's not needed. And the big refrain, I'm sure you've probably heard, is in screenplay, make sure you show, don't tell. So what's the difference between writing a novel and writing a screenplay? I think this afternoon, the workshop is going to be focusing on the technicalities of writing a screenplay, how you format it, etc. But I want to kind of look at the bigger picture of what's the difference in concept. So in a novel, it can be extremely wide-ranging. You can decide you're going to jet set back and forth between New York and LA and go off to Amsterdam and just whatever, okay? While if you're doing a screenplay, especially from a producer's perspective who's trying to keep costs down, the less locations, the better. So if you're able to keep it in one location, like say we're going to just shoot it all in Albuquerque, New Mexico, like Breaking Bad, great. And if you're an independent filmmaker, You want to even keep it even closer. So let's say you're not running from various parts of Albuquerque to film. You can actually settle in one location and make it look like various locations. So you're not having to pick up and move your cast and crew all the time. So with filmmaking, you really try to bring it down as much as you can. In a novel, you can have a wide number of characters, all with huge backstories. It can be generational. It can be as complicated as you want. But in a film, you want to limit the number of characters if you can, for a lot of different reasons. If it's a film, it's going to be about 90 minutes long, and you can only track so much. One of my favorite films that had a large cast was Love Actually. And when I was reading the critical reviews of it before I saw it, it indicated this is a large cast. You're going to have to pay attention. And because the stories are all intertwined. So that one's a little bit unusual. Usually with a film, you're going to have the main protagonist and a couple of supporting characters. With a novel, you can have an extremely complicated storyline, your A, B, C line. With a film, A line and maybe a B line with regards to your character, your protagonist. With a novel, the writer generally has full control. You might have editors or publishers that make recommendations or whatever, but the writer has full control. With screenplay, the way they've said it is basically once you sold the screenplay, you've written it, you throw it over the fence, and that's the last you have to do with it. Because they can do all kinds of stuff. They can change the ending, they can change dialogue, they can combine characters. They basically have paid you more or less for the concept, and then they can do whatever they want with it. So as a screenplay writer, you may be disappointed that what you end up seeing on the screen is not exactly verbatim what you wrote. Lastly, with a novel, you can go to in-depth descriptions. You know, you can take your literary talents and just really go off on tangents and beautiful, flowery language. With a screenplay, again, it's more succinct and it's show, don't tell. You're writing with pictures. So, for example, also it's the motivation. If you're writing a novel, you can really write it for your own pleasure, especially if it's a short story or a poem, something a little bit short. You can just do it just for you, okay? And it's intended to be read. Now, a screenplay, it's meant to have an audience. The point of it is you want to get it up on the screen and share it. And it's meant to be seen. So those are extremely different base concepts of what you're trying to accomplish. So on both of them, though, you do have plot-driven versus character-driven writing. And those two different focuses do work for screenplay. So the difference, plot-driven versus character-driven. In the plot, the character may be unchanged. Actually, think of our superhero movies. They basically start at one point and end at the same point. Versus with a character-driven, there's an arc for the character. They're going to go through some kind of a change. A plot-driven is more, actually, look at it, action adventure again, the superhero movie. It's going to have lots of action, kinesthetic or physical, while a character-driven is more emotionally driven. And then again, with plot, it could be good versus evil, versus character-driven may be gray areas where they're having to figure out, you know, what do they want to do? It's a little bit more complicated. With plot-driven, you can definitely use character stereotypes. With character-driven, you generally will play against stereotypes. You may have someone who at first blush may appear to be a stereotype, but as you dig deeper into that person, into that character, you find out that no, they're a lot more complicated than that. And lastly, with a plot-driven, there's going to be outer motivation and potential inner motivation. Versus, as we've described with the character-driven, that main protagonist especially will have layers to them. So the point of this conversation here is to talk about the screenplay stakeholders. And so if you're unfamiliar with the term stakeholders, it's a party with an interest. And so these are the main players I've identified here with regards to a screenplay. There's everybody basically with regards to making a screen film is a stakeholder, though. It really comes down to that. But these are the three I wanted to focus on. And just backing up a step, that's actually the biggest reason I enjoy filming. And it's because it is not a solo event, it is a team, and every single person on that team contributes. If you have one person on that team that is not doing their best, it shows. And literally, with everything I've done, everyone really brings their talent, you know, whatever they're doing, if it's down to costuming, makeup, hair, acting, directing, the DP, the director of photography, the caterer, all that. Everyone does their best, because if any of those fall short, it actually impacts everybody else. And it brings the whole quality and the whole synergism and teamwork down. So just realizing that when you do a screenplay, if you're on set, you are part of a team. You are not an individual. So the first one I wanted to talk about, and mostly talk about, is producer. That's mostly what I do, so it's the one I'm most familiar with. And when you say producer, with regards to filmmaking, there's actually 19 different types of producers. So it's like, which one are you talking about? And it can run everything from the executive producer, that's the highest level, the one who gives you the money to make the project, down to the lowest producer, which is the line producer, okay? Basically, that one kind of manages the crew. And then if you just say producer by itself, you don't identify any of those other 19, it's usually this one, which is the person at the very, very beginning who initiates, coordinates, supervises, and manages the creation of a production. So they will be the one that, for example, a screenplay comes across their desk, or they read a great story and they go, oh, I'd love the screen rights to this. So they start it. And they say, okay, I need money. So they go to the executive producers, could be plural, go to different sources. And then they basically, every step of the way, they're making it happen. They're hiring all the people to make it happen. So the one thing too is, although the producers may do the same thing, from getting the executive producer down to all the crew, director, etc., they have their preferences. So if you were to pitch to a producer, you need to pitch to what they like. And so me personally, I like comedy. I have been asked to help produce a documentary that was extremely sad. And that's when I decided I don't want to be sad for days on end. I want to be laughing, you know, and I enjoy when I'm on set when we're making a comedy. So that is what I focus on. You can have others that enjoy drama or documentary or whatever. So basically identify the producer for what your project is, and that's the person you really would prefer to pitch to. Now, the one thing I talk about here is don't concern yourself with the budget. Instead, like I said, the most important thing is the story. And then the producer will figure out how to do it. So what a producer can do to make the costs come down is, like I talked about, they can combine locations. Say you did write the story and they're traveling between here and there and whatever. If it's not real important that it's exactly this location, why not bring it all together? You know, why not have them remain in the same city, you know? Or you might combine characters, especially if you have a very minor character, you know, combine them with another if it's important that that information is left in the storyline. If that minor character's point is not essential to carrying the story forward, you might get rid of that character right around it. Another way a producer helps bring down costs is through special effects. So you have all these glorious ideas and think, well, gosh, you know, I can't have someone floating, you know, in space. That's just, you know, too difficult. Well, there are a lot of techniques, special effects that producers are able to work with to make anything possible. Another one to consider is time period. It is more expensive to produce one of these historical novels with all the fancy wigs and costuming, and you have to be in the elaborate castles and etc. If you take that same great story and put it in modern times, if that works, that's going to cut the budget down quite a bit, help a lot. And then lastly, it's the amount of time to film. So we talked about combining locations. That's one way of helping bringing down the cost. Every time you have to change locations, you're having to pick up all the equipment, cast and crew, move them to that location, set them all up, and then go again. Versus if you can consolidate the locations, that's going to help consolidate and bring down your time. I'm going to give some examples shortly where literally I was hired to produce a short film for a competition. And this competition solicited screenplays throughout, at least the United States, maybe through the world. And the judges selected 10 top screenplays. Then they brought in, I think, probably 5 producers to produce the screenplay. And basically, the producers got to pick which one of the 10 they wanted to produce. And during this meeting where the producers got to pick their screenplays, the competition basically said, this was our #1 choice of screenplay. We all loved it. It won hands down, but you can't produce it. And that's because you have a $500 budget, which is like nothing. And they said, this screenplay requires the set. Think of NASA, you know, just mission control at NASA. Okay, that costs a lot. And we need a live C-section delivery. Not sure how we're going to do that. Let me see, there's a bus we're going to explode, and we're going to have stunts in it. There's one person gets hit by a car, another one, it's a high stunt fall. So it's like, okay, so we can't do this one. And I said, I want to do it. And they're like, you can't, you know, just, there's no way you can. And fortunately for me, I knew one of the people on the board for this competition in a different capacity. And he basically said, let her try, let her try. And I remember sitting there after they gave the #1 screenplay to me. So that was one of the things we won. One of the awards was the #1 screenplay. The producer next to me said, you know, I saw a school bus for sale down on blah, blah, blah. You know, maybe you could use your budget to buy the school bus to blow it up, I guess. And I said, I got it covered. So I'm going to show you what we did. This is first the mission control set. And you look at that and you go, oh man, we got a lot of computers and people, and there's that big screen, and this big screen was moving with information and everything else. Our location was inside of a high school computer classroom. You darken everything. You don't see this looks like a classroom. That big screen that looks like a computer screen is simply one of the special effects. We programmed, you know, made a scene and then projected it onto a large screen. So this looked real, but it cost basically actually nothing. You know, if you can get locations for free. The next thing we were talking about was, oh my God, that live C-section. Oh, Sam Roy is wanting remote control. Okay, so Sam Roy, do you have that? Okay, sorry about that. So the next thing I was going to talk about is the C-section. You know, that was part of the screenplay, and it's how you're going to do that. So again, this is on the computer screen. One of our technicians in mission control is watching this occur. And how we did that is actually, if you contact Sony Studios, this was Sony at least, you can get various film clips of anything. And so that did cost us, but because the competition we were part of is actually a nonprofit, they gave us a very sweet deal for this film clip. Next, we talk about exploding a bus. And it's like, phew, I didn't go out and buy a bus and blow it up. That was our special effects. This was another film clip. And this was taken from some, I think, a Buddy Holly movie or whatever. And the bus is actually like their tour bus just going across Kansas. But we had a special effects guy that came in and digitally blew up that bus. So again, another way of putting the cost, keeping the cost down. Lastly was our high stunt fall. This guy fell off I don't know, 20 or 30-foot area. And again, that is a true stunt fall. That is a professional stunt actor. But basically, you're able to do a lot of things inexpensively through magic and connections. So that's what a producer kind of does. The most important thing the producer is interested in is, can they sell this? You know, so if they want to call it for wallet, make it theatrical or a TV show or something like that. So if they're purchasing this screenplay for themselves, they want to make sure they can turn around and sell it. They want a great concept, a story with a compelling log line and engaging characters. And then I kind of think I'm like ADD, because I want to start reading the screenplay and then be brought in within at most 5 pages. Within 3 to 5 pages, I really want a page turner. What's coming next? You know, really, you know, grab my attention. And lastly, you should always have a great log line, so you can just say in one quick sentence, maybe 2 sentences, what your story's about. And so sample log lines, you guys might recognize these. A young FBI cadet must confide in an incarcerated and manipulative killer to receive his help on catching another serial killer who skins his victims. Okay, so if you recognize that, it's Silence of the Lambs. Again, that's 1 sentence. Next, a wheelchair-bound photographer spies on his neighbors from his apartment window and becomes convinced one of them has committed murder. It brings you in, you're going, that sounds fascinating, and that is from Rear Window. So if you have a story that you want to pitch, you do want to create a log line, because seriously, it does happen. They talk about the elevator pitch. You push the button, someone comes in and you recognize them as a producer or someone who might have it in. Throw out a log line, an interesting log line, and they want to know more. So when a producer is reading a screenplay, they don't want to see what the camera sees. In other words, they don't want you to tell them, pan left, do this. Those are the director of photography's decisions. They want the story, okay? So a little description can go a long way. So instead of writing elaborate visual descriptions, it's more about the atmosphere of the scene. Then the director, the DP of photography, even the actors can all kind of figure out how they're going to portray that. So the best example I have here is with First Blood. The screenplay said that Rambo's going to shoot out all the lights in the town. Now, if you think of how that would be, you know, it's like going up and down every street. It's like, you know, I don't know. And to get it done quickly, effectively, and least expensive is basically the DP said, oh, let's have them shoot out a transformer. You know, it's like exploding and the lights of the town go out. So they accomplished the same thing, but differently. This one is kind of sets an example of the mood. It's gray. The platform is packed with business commuters, suits, overcoats. There is such a lack of color, it almost seems as if it's a black and white shot, except one commuter holds a bright red heart-shaped box of candy under his arm. Well, with that, your whole mind is engaged and you've created that scene. It goes on, it says, he's in his 30s, sallow, a bit puffy. His hair is a little messy. His suit is either vintage or just old and dirty and sort of threadbare. His bright tie has a photograph of rodeo painted on it. So again, from just that description, you kind of get who this character is with this one interesting bit about the tie with the rodeo. Tells you a little bit more about that. So that's a sample of how a screenplay would be written versus a novel that would be very, very differently written than this. So that's from the producer's perspective. From the director's perspective, they are the creative lead on the project. They start with the project right in the very beginning and they handle it all the way through. So if you don't know the terms pre-production, production, and post-production. So pre-production is all the planning that goes into the project before you start filming. And it is months worth of work for a feature film and probably for a short film, at least a month's worth of work. You're basically deciding on locations, cast, crew, you know, every aspect of it. Then the production is the actual filming. And lastly, you get to post-production, which is the editing and special effects and things like that, the musical score. Well, the director is involved in all of that because they have a creative vision that they are now creating. Okay, and that director is usually hired by the producer. Now, some directors view the screenplay as a blueprint to answer the question, what does the audience learn in this scene? Okay, so they're keeping really to the core of the story. And they usually select the actors. And the one thing to keep in mind is if you write something and it's so crystal clear that this has to be a certain actor, don't bet that they're going to hire this actor. What you want is the quality of that character. And then the director will end up picking who that actor is. With regards to a writer's involvement on set, it depends 100% on the director. They may simply work with the story and never even talk to the writer, or sometimes they can bring the writer to set to bounce ideas off of. So if you're a director and you're given a screenplay, basically what you're doing is reading it first for fun, and then secondly, getting ideas of how you would create this whole concept and make it understandable, believable to the audience. So some of the things a director may look at when they're reading a screenplay is they appreciate realistic dialogue, but only better. When you think how all of us talk, we will chit chat and, you know, I don't know, maybe go off on a tangent and just whatever. So with screenplay, every bit of dialogue needs to have its purpose. You're delivering information for some reason, or it's delivering information about the character. And you want that dialogue, like I said, to be better than reality, crisp, snappy, memorable. You know, you have a various dialogue or lines from movies that we all know because they were snappy. And again, the bottom line is the director wants you to tell the story, you know, to show it visually in his head, but not necessarily provide all the details of how it's going to occur. So some of these are some famous movie quotes to show you snappy dialogue. I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse. We all know that as The Godfather. Toto, I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore. We all realize that's The Wizard of Oz. You got to ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk? Again, the whole phrasing of that is awesome, from Dirty Harry. So in each one of these, those lines, they're memorable, but they tell you a lot about the character too, on the phrasing and the word choice. This is a recent one. I'm going to science the shit out of this. And that was from The Martian. So dialogue, realistic, snappy dialogue is extremely important when anyone's reading the screenplay, but especially the director or the actor. So when you're writing dialogue for your screenplay, it's recommended that you have cold reads. That's where you may be with a group of actors and ask them just read the parts and see what they fall and stumble on, which ones get the kind of response that you were hoping for. And basically with your characters, the way they speak should be consistent, distinct. You know when they talk that it's in their voice. This is them. Keep it brief. Generally, people don't like long monologues in film. And lastly, don't do an information dump. In writing, they call it maids in the hall. And I still see some of this in movies where they'll have, for some reason, a character explaining a lot of backstory because they really want to get that information in there. And this is the only way they think they can do it. And that is, if you can avoid it, please do. And again, our famous phrase, show, don't tell. So now we've talked about the producer looking at a screenplay and a director looking at a screenplay. How about the actors? What are they looking at? So if you're talking about unknown actors, they may be looking one thing. And if you're talking about big name actors, they're going to be looking for something else. mainly an actor does want a juicy character, one they can really get into. I've had them create whole backstories that are not in the screenplay at all, but they know that this is the background of this character. This explains why this character is the way they are. And when they do that, they step into that character and they can respond as that character would. Then I have here, depending on the director, an actor may be allowed to change the lines to make it more natural for them or how the character might have said it, and sometimes ad lib. And I've actually, when we have filmed, like with Where's Norma Now, we have the whole story, and then we have, you know, here's the way we're doing it and everything. And then I will say, this is the punchline ending. Okay, and we already know what the punchline is. And it's like, okay, what are some other punchlines you would throw out there? You know, and we enjoy ourselves. We're laughing and we're doing it. We're filming it. We have them go ahead and try each one. And there's at least one, Where's Norma Now, where we didn't go with the written punchline. We went with someone threw out there one that we all just thought it was just too good. Okay, and I've been on set too, where they've allowed an actor to go ahead and riff. And that works. Actually, I was just thinking, when Harry Met Sally, the whole thing, I'll have what she's having, that was an ad-lib line from the director's mother. I think it's the director. So anyway, with regards to actors, again, the less you say, the more you show, the better you are. That's Charlton Heston. So that tells you their perspective. Now, if you're the writer and you're trying to appeal to the actor, so again, adequately describe the character, you know, so they can really get into who this character is. Sometimes slang, clothing. We just talked about that one where the guy had the threadbare or possibly vintage, you know, something they can really grab onto and just say, okay, I understand where this person's coming from. And when you're writing, don't write in facial expressions. With a screenplay, you'll put the character's name and then their dialogue right below it. And sometimes in parentheses, right below their name, you can add something, you know, scoffs or, you know, something like that. But you wouldn't say crunches up face in disbelief. No, the actor, whichever emotion you're trying to have them portray, which might be the emotion in the parentheses, they're going to figure out. And the emotion could be something simply as not even saying anything, pausing while you just watch their face just drop. And then they say their line or whatever. They are going to express it. And actually, I had here actors, and I think other places you might have seen me say talent. When I first came on set, and I called them actors, and then I saw some truly good talent. And you just realize that they go from who they are to some other character in minutes. And they are so wholly that character. We've been on set, actually, this was one of Jacqueline. We did a short story for her. And a minor character, not the protagonist, had a little bit of a monologue and did it so well and was, you know, holding back the tears while she's telling the story. We had 2 people exit set because they were going to start crying. And on set, you are not supposed to make any noise, not moving, not anything. And that was this person interpreting this dialogue and being so there. And with film, you can grab that face up close and just look at the trembling lip or whatever. So I did graduate from calling them actors to they truly are talent. And as the writer, don't tell them how they're going to accomplish this. If they're good, they will accomplish it through their means. So as an actor, when they're reading a script, of course, they want a character that they can really get into, hopefully one that develops. You know, maybe it's emotional journey or it's an arc they have to go through. If they're someone who likes humor, they want to read the humor, make sure it's something that they enjoy. You know, I mean, we've seen some humor that, I have no other way of saying it, but say it's 13-year-olds, you know, or whatever. It's just like, not my humor. I want something a little bit more sophisticated, maybe. Maybe it's something that they consider physically challenging and they like the idea of that one. Now, this last one, what an actor may consider is more like a known actor or someone who's on their way of being known. And a lot of times they are typecast. So think Christopher Walken. Only Christopher Walken can play a Christopher Walken character. But sometimes they get so typecast, and then it's like they don't want to be typecast, or maybe early on they realize they don't want to be. So they will specifically look for a screenplay that challenges them, that gives them more of an opportunity to show their ability. I can't think of the name of the actress. It was an actress who played beautiful roles. You know, she's always the beautiful female lead, and she wanted to play really horrible, mean prisoner. You know, I mean, not at all what you would think of. And that was so she wouldn't get typecast. So these are some suggestions with regards to if you're a writer doing a screenplay. Real quick and easy is you can register your screenplay, outline, synopsis, treatment, I mean, very minimally almost, excuse me, with the Writers Guild of America, and it's very inexpensive. I have here that it was $10 to $20. I haven't confirmed if that's still the going rate. So that is the easy way. And a lot of times, say you want to get something off real quick to an agent or whatever, that gets it registered really quickly. However, that's not necessarily the best way. Copywriting is more secure, you know, it's legal. And so that would cost a little more, cost a little bit of time. And I understand that you're going to have a workshop on that. And that is the better way to go if you are you've got a serious project that you are about to let out there. So also, just a quick summary here. We're doing ahead of schedule, which is good. So I talked about the producer, and actually producer, director, and actor is the three I kind of really focused on. With the producer, as the writer, you realize they want something to sell. Honestly, it seems that certain things become very popular, and then they get tired of seeing all of that. So, oh gosh, 10 years ago, horror was really popular. And of course, zombies were really popular. And so if you're at the cutting edge of some new trend, that's good. But if you're at the back end of it, they're going to be so swamped with the same stuff. Doesn't matter too much what your storyline is. They've seen it. They've heard it. They want something new, something fresh. I emphasize pitching to the right producer. Do a little research to see what kind of projects they enjoy. And that's what you send to them. Lastly, it is most important that the story be good from the get-go. Doesn't matter if you have a compelling character or a neat location or filmed in a time frame that, you know, historical time, that's really cool. They want a compelling story. So those are the things that the producer looks at. The director, first of all, it's got to be a story, again, that they're passionate about, that they can see a creative vision and how they're going to portray this. They want realistic characters, and they want that great dialogue we talked about. Succinct, snappy, realistic. Lastly, for the actors, they want a character that they can really sink their teeth into, not usually flat stereotypes. They also may want a character that they can show some growth, a character arc. Again, if they're doing something with humor, it's a humor that they can buy into. And it may be physical challenges. They want to be able to do certain things to show their, you know, that they're able to do this. Lastly, if they are a known actor, they are going to consider how do they want their audience, their fans, to see them. And it can either be that they're playing into what they've been typecast as, or they want to get out of that and they want to do something completely different. Sometimes if you've got a project and there's someone you think would be really good for it, but it's not their typecast, a lot of times that's when they will sign on and say, oh yeah, this is something I could really do. It's either the character, they really think this is something that's going to challenge me, or maybe it's a story they really want to get out there. And so if you end up having a known actor attached to your project, it is much easier to get it picked up by either producer, whatever.